he is going to use the saw, and he is going to hug it and pet it and squeeze it.
I will hug it and pat it and squeeze it. Gee, George. Hi folks, Chip and Rob are out in the shop, and again we're embarking on a project that really has nothing to do with contentment, but it's something we've been meaning to get done and just thought this might be an opportunity to film something in case anybody's interested. Why don't you tell them what you do for a living and what this project is?
Well, I am a high school social studies teacher, and my room does not have a podium or lectern, whichever one you want to call it, and I mentioned maybe building one because we have some leftover plywood from the magic ottoman that we made for Chip's birthday. So it's going to be of great use to make the podium. It's really like the perfect size for what we need for it. But Chip went online and he found a really great design, and he's drawn up some plans for it. It's going to have like a movable top and everything. So I'm really excited.
Well, hopefully it'll be real simple to, glue and staple together. It's going to have some rolling casters. It'll have a little shelf on the side that folds up and locks, so you can put a projector or something like that on it. And then I don't know about the rolling top. I think it might be better to have a drawer that rolls out underneath the top, something like that. But we'll work it out.
Well, some kind of thing that slides.
Yeah, something that slides out where you can store things like pencils and papers,
and staplers and stuff.
Yeah. So I do have some just a little simple drawing, and with something like this where it's basically just a box and it's almost like a kitchen cabinet style construction, should go together fairly easily. So yeah, I just thought I'd show you my drawing here. I don't spend a lot of time drawing up things that I think are going to go quickly, or at least ones that I hope will. But it's basically an open box. There'll be, I don't have it drawn in here, but there'll be a little shelf here. There won't be a door, it'll just be open. The other side will be enclosed. But this little style right here, rail, forgive me, this little rail that looks like it's part of the frame, the plan is to actually have that roll out and have a shallow drawer in there to hold some things underneath the lid. We decided that we were going to go with a flat top instead of a slope top on this Lectern because she's got a computer she likes to set up on top of that. So we're going to make that flat, and it might have just like a little surround around it to sort of keep things from rolling off. But there'll be a shelf here on the side that said flips up and goes back, and there'll be some casters on here, but that's pretty much the design. We'll get to it now. Okay, so when you're building something like this, you want to conserve wood as much as you can because stuff's expensive to buy. This sheet cost almost $60, and that's a lot of money for a piece of plywood, even if it's a birch plywood like this is. But still, the plan is to be able to build this Lectern just using one sheet of plywood, which is easy enough to do. And so I've got this piece of birch. The look of the Lectern will be sort of a maple birch look. This is birch, it's not maple. It's cheaper, but it sort of looks like maple, and it'll go well with the hardwood maple trim we're going to put on it. So I elected to get birch. We'll just stain it naturally, maybe put some black trim or something. I don't know, just something for contrast. But anyway, getting back to it. Important to figure out exactly what your needs are. And so what I've done here is I've gone and made a list based upon my drawing and some sketches I made. I'm trying to figure out exactly what size pieces I will need. And then I've basically lined them out here on the board and marked them so that I will know when I go to cut, exactly what I'm supposed to get out of it. One of the things I did was, when you're selecting wood and you sort of want it to be showy and pretty and you want to show the wood, you'd like to show an area of the wood that has, at least in this case, not always, but in this case, you want to show a little bit of this figuring on it and maybe center that on the panel that we installed in the front of the Lectern so it looks pretty. And so I selected this area right here to be in the front, and that's you sort of want to approach that first, approach the pretty areas of the wood that you want to show, and then take the rest after that. But you also want to make sure you've got enough here, and so you line it out. I'm going to wind up with a little bit of scrap, not a lot on this one, so that's how we do it. So we'll cut these pieces out a little larger than needed, rough size, or rough cut size, and then we'll go back with the table saw and cut them to the finished size. Before I assemble this, I'm going to go ahead and mark the holes and drill the holes for the bottom casters on this. Just makes it a lot easier than trying to get a drill into this bottom shelf after it's been assembled. And so just get that out of the way and it'll be good. I'm going to sand them before I assemble them. I found doing that makes it a lot happier, and I'm a lot happier with the result than trying to get into all those cracks and crevices and corners and things and try to sand it after it's been assembled. Just a lot easier. You know, one other thing I found in assembling casters and mounting things like this that have pre-drilled holes, make sure that your drill bit is the same size as the pre-drilled hole on whatever you're mounting and not the same size as the bolt. For instance, the bolts that go through here should be something like a 3/16, but this hole is 13/64, just a tiny bit larger, you know, to allow a little bit of wiggle room to stick that bolt in without any trouble. If you do it at 3/16, it's much harder to get the bolts in, and you don't want to be messing with it, you know, once it's assembled, trying to get it down in that corner, re-drilling it, all that fun stuff. So I don't know if you can see that on this drill bit, but there's a little tiny point right there on the tip of the drill bit. This is called a brad point drill bit. It's used for drilling wood and other softer materials. The advantage to a brad point bit is that it centers right where you want it, where a lot of drill bits, you know, a normal drill bit, when you put it on something, it can have a tendency to wander or wiggle a little bit. This helps hold it right where you need it, so it starts the hole properly and then gives you a really nice cut. About sanding, I learned from an old woodworker many years ago. He sort of taught me how to sand, and it's an interesting process. I mean, you know, you think, how hard can it be? You just run the sandpaper across, but there really is sort of a process that helps you get a really nice smooth finish at it. And I'm using 220 grit sandpaper on this, but you simply run it up. When you get to the end, make a little back and forth like that, and then just work across the wood. And you don't need to spend a lot of time. If the wood is, already pretty well prepared, you don't need to spend a lot of time sanding. But you do need to clear the sandpaper every once in a while. And just go back and forth, following the grain, of course. Now you see the color change just doing this little bit. I think the reason why I was taught to do this little jiggle at the end like this is because it sort of prevents a tendency to roll this block over the edge and thereby round over a piece of wood that you may not want that way. That's the only thing I can think of. It seems to work good that way for prevention. And this is done. It feels very smooth. As smooth as glass. That's ready for finish. Now this piece here is the shelf that'll have a couple of racks on. It'll hang like this from the side of the lectern, and then whenever Robert needs it, she can simply grab it. It'll be on hinges and flip it up like that. She can put a projector or anything else she wants to on it. And you'll notice it's made out of plywood. It's not a very pretty edge, and I'm not going to go to the trouble of edge banding it and things like that. I think what I'll do instead is maybe just paint this edge. Now, that's looking pretty rough. That looks really rough and it looks ugly. A good way to smooth it out when you've got plywood like this or MDF or something like that is to take some glue, a good PVA wood glue like this Type Bond 2 or even Type Bond 3 that's got some really good solids in it. The stuff is almost like epoxy. The difference, one of the favorable differences between this and epoxy though, is that this is a little easier to get some paint and finish onto than certain epoxies can be. So, I mean, I'll just, I'll sand this smooth. I'll take some of that glue and I'll fill in the voids and things like that here and smooth it over, let it dry, and sand it again. Then I think what I may do is, depending on how it looks, if it looks okay, I may just leave it. But if it doesn't look good, I think I might just mask this off and go with a little black paint to sort of complement the trim that we have planned on this as well. Robert. What's the issue? You can pull that away and instead lay it on this side. What's that hitting? Right on there like that, and we'll line it up with the shelf itself. Shelf itself. That's a little square. Okay, let's square it up again.
This?
We're just doing what we call butt joints here because it's a simple cabinet. It's not going to roll around a lot, and this glue is pretty good. If I wanted to, really take my time, I would cut some mortises in here and, sort of sink these shelves in here for a little extra stability. I'm really just not going to take a lot of time to do that, and besides that, my router isn't working right lately. I've got to drop the new one in there, and I haven't gotten around to it. So we're just doing simple butt joints with good glue and staples. And one of the things I'll do is install this little cleat that'll help hold the shelf in place. It'll glue to both the inside of the cabinet and to the edge of the shelf. And then I will staple 1 1/4 inch staples through this right here to hold it in place. Total thickness here between this cleat and this side is 1.5 inches, so the staples won't go through, and I won't have ugly staple heads showing on the other side. Putting this together, double check to make sure what side you want sticking out and showing. I don't want that sticking out and showing. It's just, this little ribboning here and the wood and stuff is kind of cool, but these knots, not so pretty. So we're going to make sure that that gets hidden. There are certain places I don't mind where staples show up because I'm going to cover them over. So I'm going to go ahead and staple every couple inches on this side and this bottom part. This is the bottom of the line. This being the side, it's going to show I really don't want any more staples there. I'll put another one on the other end, just one, to hold it. If I know where that, it should be right about here. That way we know it holds it. I really don't want to put any along here. I'm going to rely upon the glue joint only, because that's going to show. In the front, where the edge of this plywood is exposed, we're going to have a piece of molding there for decoration, so it'll cover that. So we've got the casters on. Let's stand it up. Push it down. Make sure all four casters are touching the floor and it doesn't tip or wiggle. And I think that'll work just fine. We'll double check it for square, clamp it up a little bit, check it for square again, and let it sit overnight. Since I can't put staples along this joint here, clamping this overnight will ensure that that glue does its best job possible of keeping that straight. And now that it is clamped, I know this is a butted well, I can go ahead and drop a couple of brads into this cleat that I have underneath here. Okay, folks, next evening, and as you can see, I've got the clamps off this now, the Lectern rolls normally. Just test fitting the top here. It looks like it's going to be just fine. But before I put it on, as I think I mentioned last time, I want to go ahead and get this drawer installed. The drawer is a 3/4 inch thick piece of plywood, and normally drawers bottoms wouldn't be that thick. But in this case, Robert wants to be able to put her computer keyboard on here and have it pull out. And so I'm trying to make the drawer a little more tough. I could go with 1/2 inch, but I don't have any 1/2 inch material laying around. This is easy. So the idea is to install this just a little bit below the top like that, a couple inches, and of course I've got some drawer slides that'll go on either side. I thought I had some birch plywood, Baltic birch, or what they call 9-ply, some of this stuff here. See how many real thin plies are in that? This is actually a 7-ply, I think, but it goes by the term 9-ply. And that you'll see that a lot in kitchen cabinetry, used in drawers and things like that. Well, this is the only piece of that material I have here. I don't have enough. And now I need to decide. So the only thing I found was some of this leftover hickory from building the wagon, and you'll want to catch our video on the wagon that we're giving away. I have some of these 1/4 inch pieces of birch that I think would be fine if I knocked them down to 2.5 inches high. I think it'll be fine and provide just enough support for the drawer. I'm not really worried about weight. The drawer bottom itself provides plenty of stiffness and stability for that. I just need something on the sides of the drawer to sort of keep stuff from rolling off and rolling out of there. So anyway, this will form the sides and the back, and it'll look prettier when you open it than that plywood might. And then see if we can install that drawer in. Okay, got my pieces cut. Pretty simple process. These are the sides and back. Not going to put anything in the front because I'm going to put a big piece of cabinet frame type molding there that looks like it matches the rest of the cabinet. So we'll just get this done pretty quickly. Now with the slides attached to the drawer, now the drawer's total depth is about 2 1/8 inches deep. So I'm simply going to mark my 2 1/8 inch depth. In fact, add a little bit more just to make sure that the top of the drawer clears the underside of the top that I'm going to install here. Let's just call it 2 1/2. Mark there, and mark there. Make sure we got it right. These drawers are self-closing. You get toward the end, they sort of shut themselves automatically. It's just one of those things that's built into drawer slides nowadays. So I don't have to worry about angling the slide or anything. It's just a simple matter of installing this. Oh, and when you install this, the wheels in front, and you need to make sure that I don't know if you can see this or not, you need to make sure that the front of this slide rests at least or about a 1/16 of an inch behind the front of the cabinet, just so I don't miss it in case this thing slides on me. There's some reference marks.
Are you almost finished?
Well, just with the drawer. Okay, so the drawer's in. It's going to do its job nicely. We'll put a keyboard here, and she can pull it out and use it if she needs to. Now it's time to put the top on. I can be fairly liberal with the glue here. I'm not really worried about it squeezing out and looking really ugly beyond a certain length. Because this whole joint around the perimeter will be covered over with a molding. We'll cover up this ugliness and give it a finished look. I don't want too many of these. I'll let the glue and gravity hold it down. This wood filler is sandable and stainable. Shove it in like that. After it dries, you just sand it along with the rest of the wood. We'll put moldings around here to cover up these joints and make this look pretty. Then finish. Drill a couple of holes for electrical wires to go through, things like that, and this thing will be ready to go to the classroom. Okay, so next step in this process while that thing's drying will be to use some of this stock maple I've had sitting around here. I got this maple in Pennsylvania, I don't know, about a year ago. I was driving through and stopped at a sawmill and got it. I got all he had, and what he had wasn't that great. As you can see, this piece, I just cut this piece off of here, and you can see the checks and splits in it and knots and stuff like that. It's not the best stuff. The other thing is that really this cut of maple is not the best situation to go on as a face frame on that cabinet. Is this going to work for you? Okay. The drawer height's going to be just right for your keyboard and everything?
I like it a lot, yeah.
It's going to work for you. Because this particular piece is a piece of end grain. In other words, the grain of the wood runs straight up and down, as you can see here. The way you really want, the wood you really want to use for a face frame would be a flat grain, something like that, where the grain runs, the rings run horizontally, and it makes it easier to get a nail through and allows for expansion. Just point it out to you because it's not the best use, but really this is the only maple I've got. And you know, if it's not obvious to you right now, we're sort of building this project out of what we've got. You know, I'll see what happens. The thing to do next is to cut the pieces for the top and bottom moldings on this, which should be painted black. Therefore, I'm not going to use a real pretty wood for this. I'm going to use something that's paintable, that's still stable. You know, we'll take a paint real good and look good. Poplar is a good wood for this kind of thing. I've already got some that I just bought from the local center that's already been planed and edged and shaped just to the thickness I need. So it's a simple matter of cutting these to length. We're going to make some rough cuts first, take them over to the saw, do our final cuts, make some nice miters for the corners, same on the bottom, add a little profile on the sides here for the top, just to give it a little style. Let's do it. 45. Now when it comes to fitting mitered pieces like this, it is much easier to just eyeball it and mark it than it is to try to use a tape measure, measure it and mark it. Seems like every time I try to do it, I make a mistake, and this is far more accurate. So what I'll do is I'll just line this piece up with the very corner on this side. When I've got that the way I want it, I'll mark this end over here, and that'll mark the beginning of the mitered cut for the other side. Much more accurate process. Oh, more. Yep, lines up nicely with my mark. And then I will transfer that mark over here. Doesn't hurt to line up with an actual tooth that'll do the cutting. And if you're not sure, make the board just a hair longer than it needs to be. You can always come back and take a little taper on this wood. Oh, probably from right about here. And just come down a little bit. Just to give it a little look. So, but we'll cut these together this way. We'll do them both the same, so the cuts are the same. And that's a good thing to do, a habit to get into, is if you have cuts that are the same thing, the same kind of thing, but opposite sides or something like that, orient and cut all the boards together. That way your cuts are the same and they don't look odd, one being, looking different from the other. Okay, folks, part of the work that we did on this is omitted. It was going to be omitted from this video because the camera stopped working last night. We couldn't figure it out. We got it working. And so what we've done thus far is we went ahead and we finished cutting the pieces for the coving on both the bottom and on the top, and then I went ahead and put just a simple primer on it. It's a water-based primer which tends to raise the grain just a little bit. So before we go ahead and put a coat of paint on it, just going along with some fine sandpaper and sort of knocking down that risen grain just a little bit, and so it's not quite so ugly with the paint on. And then we also need to glue and staple the trim pieces on the front and on the back, put some finish on this and paint these, and then I think we'll be ready for final assembly. So I personally am a fan of leaving woods natural and clear. Robert would like a little bit of color to this, a little bit of tint. So I've got a toner here. I just had some left over from another project sitting around. It's an amber colored toner, and it's really just a colored lacquer that turns a wood that looks like this into something that looks more like that. So we're going to apply just a little bit of this toner to the piece, and then we'll cover it with a couple of good coats of varnish. So here we go. Look at that glass-like finish on these things. Robert did an awesome job. We used the toner on the piece, and it didn't come out so well. It was a lot more orange than this. It basically turned into a pumpkin, and it was so orange. And so I think, you know, what we're gonna do is, we've already started removing it, but I mean, it was bright orange. We started removing it. We'll get the rest of it off with some acetone or something like that, sand it down again, and then decide how we want to finish it from there. But yeah, that technique didn't work out so hot.
Look at you. It looks good.
Oh, it's fine. Stain's not too dark, nice and light. Some sort of a honey color, or aged oak color, or whatever, which is looks pretty good on this maple. It's gonna be fine.
Thank you for helping and doing this.
I don't know if that made a difference, but
It looks so good.
it's last day of this little Lectern project build, and last thing left to do is to put these, what are called baker's shelf hinges, on the little side shelf. Now this shelf will be used to hold a projector, because when Robert's teaching, she uses a lot of audiovisual stuff, and this is one way to hold the projector, because the lectern itself is going to have a computer that sits on top of it. Then off to the side, it'll be this shelf that can pop up or fold down as she needs it, and which will hold her projector to project things from the computer onto the screen, onto the classroom wall. I've got a little piece of wood here to simulate the side of the cabinet, so that I can get these hinges right where they need to be. And you'll notice this hinge has a little lever on it. You push the lever, it collapses the shelf, and then you, of course, open it again. But I'm going to get these installed. The first thing you do would be to mark the holes. I'm going to go. I found these online. These are called baker's shelf hinges. And I don't know where it got that name, maybe on a baker's rack, but the idea is you can, when you're done using the shelf, you can push this down and the shelf collapses. And then whenever you need it, you just simply pull the edge of the shelf up and it locks. So let's get some holes drilled, some screws set. I think the reason for this tall shoulder here on this shelf bracket is because the shelf bracket is designed, I think, to hold up to 100 pounds. I have no idea why a baker would need that much. I just like to eat this stuff. It's not long enough. Okay, this one's going in by hand. Okay, let's get it mounted on the side of the lectern. Which can be tough for me these days because my hands don't work as well as they used to. I get really bad arthritis in these 3 fingers, so bad that the fingers actually come out of joint when I try to bend them sometimes. So, uncomfortable morning. This. But hey, I still enjoy working with my hands, and I will continue to do it as long as I can. All right, let's give it a go. Nice. Raise it up. Oh, it looks like a strong hinge, even though it's kind of rattly. I think it'll be fine. That's the thing about school furniture. I mean, it just can get torn up, and so having strength is kind of important. These 2 little levers go down, and then when you're ready for it, pop it up. Well, there it is, folks. A school lectern that's fit for a queen teacher. It's got a drawer that's sort of semi-hidden, and the kids really don't know how to open it unless they know a little trick to do it. And then also, of course, a shelf, which can hold a projector, nice and strong, holds up to, well, I guess 2 hinges, maybe 200 pounds, although I wouldn't trust it. And ready to go. The only other thing I'll do is I'll cut a piece of some rubberized sort of non-skid material to put in these shelves. I mean, as you've been watching this video, you realize that I've used some old, uglier plywood material for the shelves. It's got holes in it and stuff like that. And I don't want those to show, so I'll just cover them up with that black material. And it'll provide a non-skid surface, a little bit of padding, and it'll look better too. So that is it. All done with this project. By the way, this material is the leftover material that we used when we installed the batteries on our solar generator. I'll put a link to that video on this, but this this shelf paper, this simple Clorox rubberized shelf paper, appears to be the ticket for a lot of things. So this one. There we go. This thing's ready to go to the classroom. Help out little knuckleheads.
Huh? Right to that little cubby.
Where?
To the right here. Ta-da! There's my room.
This one?
Very good.